I'm doing everything that I think that I should in my marriage, but I seem to be getting in my own way. Or I have friends calling me out, or other guys in the men's group saying, "Hey, maybe that's not the best idea." Or, I find myself as a man, as a husband, as a father, falling into the same patterns. It's kind of like, am I making the same mistakes over and over? I'm really not sure. That's our topic of today. Don't self-sabotage. Don't self-sabotage yourself, or don't self-sabotage your marriage. This is the C Note Show with myself, Jeff Allen, and Cynthia Cruz. Cynthia and I are professional relationship counselors. We're married and we've been in private practice for about 8 years now. And this channel is about working with men, about working with husbands and fathers and men who want to learn how to lead and offer safety and inspiration and leadership within their marriage, within their relationships. Because not only is relationship a science, right? Our academic training is in behavioral interventions, emotional interventions, and the science of behavior, but loving and being loved is also an art. Relationship is also an art, much of which is hidden behind a curtain or not yet painted on the canvas. And that's what we're going to talk about today with self-sabotage. Cynthia and I practice and we teach what we call level 3, deep conscious intimacy in relationship. And here's a bit of a testimonial that I saw on the forum today before we started. This man's down being affected by the hurricane. So, of course, we wish him the best of luck there. And he says, current estimates for services to be restored around 4 to 6 weeks. Now, we have some relatives down there as well that had no water, no electricity. I don't know if they're still 4 to 6 weeks out, but that's crazy. So best of luck. But I'm showing this because he wrote, just wanted to say that all the work I've been putting into my marriage, doing the hard work, has me and my wife, even though our situation remains dire, a good team. We've easily been able to delegate tasks and divide and conquer this adversity. She's gone with the children in a safe place with power and water, and I'm here roughing it, as they say. But I want to brag on her a little bit. She's never been so trusting and calm of the way I've chosen to handle the hard things, and she and I continue to grow every day. I don't know how many of you here have been affected by this hurricane, but I wish you all a speedy, inexpensive recovery. Stay strong, gentlemen. Your family depends on you most. And what a fantastic example of her trusting his leadership. The last call, so different topic, what we did last time. If you're watching this on YouTube, this is our previous video. So, after you watch this, you can go back and watch this previous one. More sex without more talking. Help her be turned on more easily. And today, again, don't self-sabotage and don't self-sabotage your marriage. If I Google psychological projection, which is what sabotage is a lot about, is projection is a defense mechanism when we, with our own behavior, impulses, and emotions, put it on another person without realizing it. And some signs of psychological projection include being overly critical, making accusations, and defensiveness. And certainly this can be from many different sources. But before we get into some more details today, of course, I'm here on the C Note Show to talk with Cynthia about this. We were out of town last week. When we were out of town last week and we talked about this topic, we've noticed that at some point in a man's work or in the disillusionment phase of a marriage, that so often, almost, let's say almost every one of us, put something of our own on the other person, or a man ends up blaming her for certain things. She has her own responsibilities, sure, but we're all here to learn, well, what can we do to better ourselves and what can we be responsible for? And we've noticed a lot of things start to get better, and then something kind of trivial seems to happen that feels like a bomb goes off to the man, but we see it as not that big of a deal. And so when I do this scrunchy face, like, I wonder what that's about. We were speaking about that this last week, and you said, and I want to ask you about this right now, that often we have this unconscious contract of punishment that's been unfulfilled. And
Mhm.
is that for us? Is that for her? Talk with us about that to start us off.
Yeah, gosh, it's a hard mirror to kind of hold up in front of our face. But I would have to say, when someone has caused us so much pain in relationship, And especially, and I even feel this in myself as a woman, when a feminine being has caused us so much pain, their energy is supposed to be full of nurturance and love and warmth and sustenance for us. And she purposely has taken that away in the past or hasn't really lived up to that, or is a kind of a shadowy reminder of the energies we've had to deal with, maybe in family. It's a very human need to want our partner to know how much pain they caused. And so sometimes there's a very unconscious desire, uh, almost to be in the storm of that anger and pain as a way for that other person to experience the intensity of what they caused, to even make them pay for how painful this has been. And it can happen in really subtle ways, but I would say it's just a very human desire to to be witnessed, to have another person know that they don't just get off scot free. And I say that very humbly because, boy, let's say the masculine can kind of want to create that so the feminine knows how much pain she's caused. But I also know that women are doing this subconsciously, consciously, wanting to create and manifest things with their bodies, with their behaviors, so that you know how much pain they've been in, and without consciousness around this, it just becomes a big storm of unknown and unexpected events, thoughts, and behaviors.
Yeah, and it's confusing at the time. We don't know that we're trying to punish her, or I don't think most people are trying to maliciously punish their partner. And unless they're kind of on the way out the door and they really want to stick it to him. I was speaking with a man last night who said he realized he put together a spreadsheet of all the expenses for his wife because he then later realized he wanted to show her how much he was taken care of. He wanted to show her how expensive it was going to be to live on her own. And it was kind of this, he didn't realize it at the time. It just was under the guise of, yeah, this is our expenses and she's going to need to know this. But underneath was a jabbing. And
Hmm.
that can go either way. What else would you say about that before we step forward?
I would say the way we interact in relationships, whether a man or a woman, the blueprints of that come long before we're actually in romantic relationships. So we watch our parents interact in certain ways, whether we're really aware of what's going on or not. And so I would say the joy of that, the adventure of that, the level three part of all of this is recognizing, gosh, these patterns move in everyone's relationship. And then leaders, masculine presence like you, how do you want to steer the boat in new and different ways, in ways in relationship that in our current world, I really, outside of communities like this, where is that happening?
Absolutely. So let's get into some examples. And those of you that are here live, we want to hear your questions. So punch into the chat or raise your hand in Zoom. And we've got a post from the forum that I want to talk about today, too. From Psychology Today, some examples of self sabotage. When a relationship needs improving, you may overly focus on decreasing negative interactions. So, okay, how can I stop messing up? But under focus on increasing positive interactions and shared experiences. And we teach this as praise. Learn how to praise her, quote, masculine tasking in the world, and learn how to praise her, quote, feminine bloom in the world in small ways. And we could talk about that, and we have talked about that another time. The second bullet, another way to self-sabotage, throwing stones in your glass house. You complain about other people's behavior when you may need to make the same change yourself. The next bullet, you repeat strategies for trying to influence others that aren't effective. For example, you repeatedly nag your spouse when it doesn't work. You operate based on how you think a situation should be rather than dealing with reality. For example, you think your spouse should be able to remember to do a particular task, so you don't write instructions when writing instructions and putting them in view would solve the problem. Sort of, we call this assuming that she can do maybe more than she really can, or assuming your partner's better at something than they really are, and then being disappointed and punishing them for that when they're trying to do it. Yeah, every man here can relate to that. You're trying to do things right and you feel punished for it. And what there's a quote that if you want to bring out evil in a person, punish them for trying to do something good. I don't know where that came from, but I heard that recently. Okay, next point of self-sabotage. Maybe you don't adequately acknowledge the valid points the other people make. You ignore the other person, bringing up genuine problems about your behavior. For example, your spouse complains about you spending time on minimally productive tasks and has a point, but you don't adequately acknowledge this. And I'd add, then you get defensive, explain yourself. That's a losing proposition. Don't defend, don't explain yourself, right? Breathe, feel the reality of the moment. And the last bullet on this page, you have emotional raw spots that, when triggered, result in out of proportion reactions. You don't have effective methods for managing your emotions and behavior when your childhood hurts and traumas are reactivated. And Cynthia, that's what you were talking about. So, why do I always sabotage my relationship? Developing a deep relationship leads to vulnerability. The process can make some insecure about the potential loss of the relationship, your self-esteem, so your ego involvement that's been building over time, and uncomfortable feelings that surface. The desire to avoid emotional pain and protect yourself could be the reason for self-sabotage. Exploring those emotions and fears can help break the pattern. So again, these are things that we've shoved down about ourselves, or we were told we're bad when we were kids, or we've had shame and all these things. Like, we all have bits of that maybe we're not conscious of, and that comes out in these projected ways. How do we bring that forth? Well, it's called shadow work in terms of Carl Jung. It focuses on the parts of the psyche that people have kept hidden, such as trauma or resentment from the past, and we're unknowingly taking that on our spouse. I'm going to go ahead and read the chat here, and then we'll jump into an example from the forum. Man wrote, you mentioned the disillusionment phase of the marriage. Can you expand on how that feels for men and women? Those of us in limbo are probably wondering if this phase will pass when we both do the work, or if the marriage needs to end. I mean, that's a phenomenal question. So let me jump back to the three phases, the three levels of relationship that we talk about briefly, and then I'll talk with Cynthia about this. So, level one, especially when we first get together, is instinctual desire. This really takes no effort. It's chemistry, the first 6 to 12 months of the relationship. We feel we do our best. We're on our best with one another. We see the positive. We don't give them a hard time about the negative things. We're projecting this perfect image of who the other person is onto the other. And so that's the honeymoon phase. And as we live together and start to build life together, we want to have level two of healthy communication. How do we speak about what we want? How do we speak about what we don't want, and boundaries in a healthy way, in a compassionate way? And then level three is building deep, conscious, spiritual intimacy. What does deep sex mean to us? What does building a life together mean to us? What's beyond just what we can count on our fingers? What's beyond just the day-to-day parenting or roommates or life together? Why have relationship in the first place? And so all of those things are important, but once we live with someone, or once we're with someone a certain amount of time after the honeymoon phase, then our fantasy of what that person is starts to fade away. All of us in our human experience project and imagine. Our brain fills in the rest of the puzzle with this perfect fantasy of what we hope the person to be, because that's how biology is enticed us to have babies, right? To have babies. Oh, this is great. It's the best thing ever. It feels amazing. Let's have babies. And then after the honeymoon wears off, you see all the parts that you were kind of turning a blind eye to before. And then what compounds the issue is we project all of our own onto those bad parts of the other person. And all of us do this. Every single person does this. The more aware you are, the more self work you've done, the less you do that, but it still comes up. It still comes up for me and Cynthia. We've talked about this. We continue to talk about this in our relationship, which is a part of healthy communication. So, what's an example of that for you from a woman's point of view of how does it feel? His question here, when a woman moves into the disillusionment phase. Let's say if she still has a bunch of baggage she hasn't worked on, versus she's done work on herself and she's aware that she's projecting or her own shadow stuff. Talk with us about that.
Yeah, and I was so the she hasn't done work. She's very unconscious. The disillusionment stage is her almost backtracking the timeline of your relationship and kind of putting notches on the belt of time of the things where she felt unheard or she felt like her expression, she couldn't express herself fully, or she expected something to go one way and it didn't go the other. And so she's kind of filling in those gaps to this current experience of, oh, there's this heaviness, this weight here. Uh, and I feel some pain about it. And there's some loss about this. There's kind of a little bit of the loss of the fantasy. There's awareness of, her own existence in the passage of time. And if she hasn't done work, she can create this as all your fault or all the masculine's fault. Because a lot of women, when you get under a lot of the anger that they're projecting on you, it's comes from deeper. They're just angry at the masculine in general. Whereas the difference between a woman who has done her work is that it is very human and normal for her to kind of take off rose-colored glasses and feel the past and go, oh, that hurt, or that didn't go the way I would have liked it to, or I felt suppressed, or I felt like I should have done this better. And there's an awareness in her that there's my shadow stuff that showed up. I could have showed up in a better way. My husband, my partner, the masculine, maybe there's a different way he could have shown up. But the whole purpose of reviewing the past for her is then how does this transform into the future? Because why else are we together now in relationship in this world but to bring these two sides of ourselves together and grow through it, not to try to reach this permanent place of perfection that never comes.
So what Cynthia was saying there is, what's the vision? What are we moving toward? Why are we together? That is level three. That is deep conscious intimacy. That's spiritual intimacy. This is the vision that you have together that's important to talk about over time, to feel in your heart, to tap into the divine of that, of, well, why are we together? Just to raise kids and have sex once in a while? Like, okay, sure, but that doesn't feel compelling, right? If you have the why, you can withstand anyhow. It doesn't feel compelling if you don't have the level three, which is why we teach this, is why we believe in this. Yeah, stuck in disillusionment. This is where we are. So, Cynthia, some guys, it was put in the forum the past few days to be careful of the echo chamber that the algorithm of YouTube or social media can put you into. Because when you're in a spot and you search and you see, let's say negatively slanted content or judgmental content, you're just going to be fed that more and more. And some men think, like, are there even women who look toward the future? Is that even a real thing? What do you mean a woman can understand her own stuff and not take it out on you? Is that even a thing? Talk with us for a minute about what you see in women's work and with women that, are there women that do this kind of work? Is that even a real thing?
Yeah, and I'm so sorry the addiction to the unawareness that makes a woman stuck in the disillusionment and the blame. When I feel a woman in that energy, all I can imagine is she's in the ocean and the water levels here, but it's also like I know you're right next to her offering the buoy and she's refusing to hold on to it. And I feel pain for her, and I'm sorry that that's what you are having to swim with. Yes, the echo chamber, I would say, on both sides can be really detrimental because there is a part of if we only see the really ratchet, hard, shadowy, below water side of the feminine and we only focus on that, is really hard for the masculine, I would imagine, to have vision of anything else. And when I say anything else, I do mean that out of that echo chamber, there are women literally learning to swim in their own emotions. There's a lot of women who really enjoy doing shadow work of the feminine, because they're aware that they have sometimes this rage, they have this pain, they have this grief, and they're aware that it's bigger than any one moment, and they're in this very emotional body, and that they can really practice among other women to experience and move and dance with their emotion, so that they can then come to relationship in the present moment. Bring only emotion that's in the present moment, and not emotion that's carrying the baggage of so many years prior, if not so many generations prior.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Just like you're doing work, there are great women that are doing work too, even though if there's pain. So we'll read the comments in a minute. If you're watching this on YouTube and you have a question about what Cynthia said, or at any time you have questions, post in the comments of YouTube or post in the chat here. We're happy to talk about that more. All right, let's jump forward to the example from the forum. Now, I've been working with this man for a handful of months. I think he's doing phenomenal work. I'm not trying to put him on blast with putting this on here, but it's a great example. He's come to the men in the group to ask for perspective, for feedback. So I really like what he's doing. I really like his question. And this is a beautiful example of what I said at the beginning of it seems like some things become a bigger deal than maybe they need to be. And what Cynthia and I have seen over our years of doing this professionally and in private practice with one-on-ones and in groups is this is the danger of self-sabotage here. This is the danger of slipping off the edge and, shooting yourself in the foot. So let's talk about it for a minute. He writes, so here's the deal. I work full time. My wife takes care of the house and kids, 6 and 8. And we both decided for this season of time, she would not work. So she stopped working. They agreed she would stop working. And now he's the only one making money right now. And just focus on raising the kids at such a formidable age. And she's an amazing mother. And I do see how other mothers in our community aren't as good as her. It's basically, so he's honoring his position. He's grateful for his spot. He's grateful for her. She works off reading books and podcasts regarding raising healthy kids, emotionally, physically, spiritually. But the truth is, my wife barely keeps up with the house and it constantly looks thrown. She does okay with dishes, laundry, etc., but the bathrooms and floors will go months without being cleaned unless I initiate and do it myself. In the past, I would end up blowing up with resentment that she doesn't care about that I value a clean house. Instead, I come home from work to a house in disarray that is gross and embarrassing for friends and extended family to come home to. Now, you can hear in my voice, I'm pointing out what may be his stuff. In the past, I would end up blowing up with resentment that she doesn't care about that I value a clean house. Okay, let's keep going. While the kids are in school, she goes to the gym, gets her nails done, has social lunches with her girlfriends, volunteers her time at the kids' school, and is continuously committed to work, volunteer project sports, hosts kids' play dates at her house while the house is in shambles. To be fair, she also does a lot of household chores and grocery shopping when the kids are in school. I'm trying to see from her perspective that possibly she's taking care of the house like nails on a chalkboard. So maybe she's not, maybe she hates taking care of the house, bathrooms and floors. Maybe this is something to do with her. I don't see in this post that he's talked with her about it, which is something I would ask him. Let's keep going. Where she sees value in putting in her energy into what's important to her, such as creating a life for the kids that is with meaning and purpose. Right. So what is she doing? I'll do this briefly. I'm not in a financial position to pay for someone to keep the house clean, and I truly value what she does for the kids and herself. But I will say in the past, I've been the nice guy and have just filled the void by cleaning the house myself when I get home from working 9 to 10 hours a day, and then resented her because of it. So again, what maybe is coming up for him from the past that really has nothing to do with her, right? I've lately been doing less around the house, inside of the house, and been tending to do more manly, like taking care of the outside of the house and garage, things that were taking a back seat while I was filling the void that my wife doesn't fill. And to be honest, that shift feels better, but as a result, the house is getting worse and worse on the inside. To be honest, in the past, I used to feel like a little that my wife didn't put me first in what I value and keeps putting the kids first. So again, what maybe is his stuff and what's really not actually a problem. She'll meal prep for them, make them breakfast on weekends while I'm on my own to figure it out. I understand, though, she won't treat me like a king unless I become the king she's been desiring. That's certainly a work in progress. So I want to ask Cynthia about that. And then there's just a couple, his question, a couple more lines. Okay. She won't treat me as like a king unless I become a king. Okay. So a good king, a benevolent king doesn't think things about her, what she's not doing. He doesn't whine that she's not making him meals. That kind of, again, this man's doing great work. I'm just making a point here. Okay. And maybe he goes to her and talks with her about this. And I don't see that in this post. It doesn't seem like he's gone to her and talked with her. Now, there's a lot more going on underneath the surface with this man, but this is an example that we see a lot.
Mm.
Things are getting better. They're getting closer. She's being more open and safe and trusting with him emotionally. She's opening more with him. They're connecting much better. And now something comes up like she doesn't do enough, and it seems like that we've seen this a lot, and often this is really upsetting to you as a man in this example, but our concerns are that you have a covert punishment that you're unconsciously waiting for a time to take out on her, and a covert like landmine that you stepped on a while ago that you kind of now you want to step off of that landmine, but it feels painful, or it feels like you're failing, or like she's not doing enough. And I don't think most people know where this is coming from, and we try to find a way to pin it on something, and our habit is to project that on the closest people around us. So what are you seeing in this spot, and specifically about she won't treat me like a king, which this wasn't about her, how she treats him. It's about the
Mm.
hows. She won't treat me like a king unless I become the king she's been desiring. So let's say that he does what does it feel like for him to become the king that she's desiring? What does that mean from a woman's point of view? What will she feel if he feels like a benevolent king? What does that feel like to a woman?
Mm. Well, I really honor and respect that that's the energy he wants to embody. And especially in the face, it sounds like there's a lot of things he's felt hurt, confused, and angered by. And so there's a lot there of, yes, and I know I want to be this. When she feels his kingly energy, she will feel a heart power from him. So let's say she is in kind of a mother creative storm and the house is in disarray, and yet she's has the kids doing a great project at the kitchen table, and he walks in, and what she feels from him is a warmth from his chest, uh, a way that he's taking in the environment, taking in her, and the gift that she is giving in the moment, and the goldenness that is there. And yeah, she'll feel the sturdiness in him of there are nuts and bolts of living that are really important in keeping, the house from falling apart, but she won't feel in that the hooks of maybe some judgment or like she's not been good enough for him, uh, or that somehow she's done something really wrong, when actually in that present moment she's doing something really very feminine and expansive.
Yeah, that's incredibly well said. So let's step forward and finish up this scenario. So the question is, he says, how do I dress and communicate what I value and what I want as far as my expectations with the house? This is where this is very common. It starts to really go off the rails here. So what I value is about you. What she values may be completely different. And then what the two of you want to do for the household is something that you have to do as an act, an ongoing journey forever. It's not a destination. So here is like as far as my expectations for the house, we're starting to really get off the trail here of a connected relationship. Let's keep going. I think first recognizing her values, and that although they conflict within mine, there can be options and solutions. Beautiful. Okay. So now we're talking, he's honoring hers and appreciating that she may have conflicting values that we can both agree on without it blowing up into a full-blown battle, World War III, like in the past. Okay. So we're seeing even more. There's the tentative concern about the past coming forth, which makes sense. I want both of us able to be communicative, our values, and find some sense of compromise so we both get what we want. Maybe not all of it, but at least it's not one-sided. Like, what do you mean? It's not one. What are you insinuating, right? And neither of us resent the other if we don't address this issue. So this is, Cynthia, what you were saying, that he is coming around to vision of what he does want, and he is
Mm.
honoring her after he, is kind of venting his stuff here to the guys. And so again, he's doing his work. He's in the middle of this work. This is why I thought this was great. All right, I'll make a point here from a book, and then we'll go over to the chat. This book was written by Dr. Stephen Hayes. He's one of the founders of ACT therapy, acceptance and commitment therapy. And there's two or three chapters on values in this book that is a little long-winded, and this is my favorite one page that summarizes values. Okay, so you're welcome. You don't have to read the book necessarily. So values are not outcomes. Values are not outcomes. Although living your life according to your values often leads to a wonderful outcome, values are not a sneaky way to get what you want. Values are directions, not outcomes. And then he gives an example I won't necessarily belabor here, but a value is the direction I'm heading, the actions I'm taking, the verb I'm enacting in the world, the way I'm being. It's a value is not a clean house. Okay, that's an outcome that you may like, and she may not give a shit about, by the way. But the value that he's espousing in his post is that he wants them to be communicative, to care about each other's values, and also he's honoring that this may be what she is doing are her values, which is exactly, if you want to see someone's values, look at their behavior, right? And maybe we can talk about this in a healthy way. And that's really his question. So I'm not here to give the answer of his scenario because that's not the point of our call today. But with this said, that so the kingly man walks in, the house is a mess, the bathrooms haven't been cleaned for months or whatever. She just doesn't do that. And he puts that aside and he opens his heart and he sees all the gratitude and appreciation for what she is doing with the kids. And he has a little smile on his face and he's not judging her, and he just is in gratitude for the moment, even if he worked 10 hours today. Add on to why is that good for her? Why is that good in a polarized relationship, a level 3 relationship? What else is she going to see that as good? Why is that a good thing?
She's gonna feel that, see that as space to be herself. And I would even say she might have actually very similar values to him. And women really struggle to have 100% energy in all the areas, all the containers of their life. So she might have values that come first before others. And so feeling that it is okay to pour herself into the container and that she's supported in that as mom, as with the kids, allows the feminine to actually find more capacity within herself, more expansion, more relaxation, more like, oh, space to be herself, which then activates more energy in her, which also then activates the more loving parts of her, the more sensual parts of her. If you want a woman to lose love and sensuality and connection with her body, make her container as small as possible, because that's what will happen to her. And in terms of like that masculine bringing space, I see that in the chat. There's so many options that you all in your masculine were saying like, hey, in this situation I would do this. And I really do see kingly energy as taking in what's there and then considering, all right, well, what else, what other gold needs to be brought into this situation so my woman, my children can flourish, and yet we still have castle walls standing.
Yeah, exactly. And so I'll go ahead and point out the 3 points of today, and then we have a little bit more time to circle back to the chat and some other questions. So, number one, ask yourself, what if this has nothing to do with her? What if I'm upset about something that really has nothing to do with her? That's the gateway into more awareness and self work. Number two, what can I control? So, a value is our actions, our direction, not an outcome. So, if I want the bathrooms clean and she's not doing it, maybe we have a conversation, but I'm not going to try to push that on her if she's doing all these other phenomenal things? So, in other words, if life were great, if your sex life with her was great, would you even care about this? It's like we find so many resentments to pick at if sex life or we feel slighted in some way. She made them lunch and not me lunch, you know. If everything were fine, would you even care about this? Or would you just clean the fucking bathroom yourself? It's not that big a deal, or hire somebody. So what can you control? And number three, what's the bigger purpose? What's the bigger direction? Or what's the larger spiritual calling here? If you were all about to, if a meteor was hurtling toward the earth and was going to crash into the earth in a week from now, would this? No, but hey, Jeff, that's not happening. So I want the bathroom clean. Okay, maybe you need to take care of it yourself. Maybe it doesn't really matter. Maybe this is just a little bit of self-sabotage potentially. Okay. So in the chat here, earlier was what you said, Cynthia, describes my wife. It's like she's running away from something, but it's unclear to her and me what she would want to run instead, what she would want to run to instead. Yeah, I'll ask you about that in a minute. Negativity. It's difficult to understand what to do with perpetual disillusionment. Certainly. I'll jump down a little bit. Yeah. Sour inside joke. Okay. One other gentleman wrote, this seems to be exactly what I'm going through right now, as my wife and I have seemingly developed a stronger connection and team post separation, and repercussions of my wife's actions have really preoccupied me recently. During the separation, I really just tried to empathize with what she's going through and work on myself. Now it's tough to accept picking up the pieces, the natural consequences of the separation. Sold our house. Now we have 2-year-long leases for our own places. Just the logistics and responsibilities of life are a bit more difficult now. Maybe a good problem to have because they're all emotionally and physically, sexually back together. They're just still separated. They're still separated, living in separate houses. And this man works with me too. And they're not attempting to reconcile. They're just really living life together as co-parents who also and also have emotional connection. So it's like everything, but they're not living together. And there's no label right now. Okay. Maybe a good problem to have, but I see myself thinking, I told you so often, and I know it's not helping me at the very least. Also, a subconscious need to say, this is a result of your actions, like to punish her. Who knows? I'm a little tired, and that seems to get my mind into more negative thinking, right? So, say again, please, about the unconscious contract of punishment or the scoreboard that a man or a woman may still feel and inadvertently enact in these kind of spots. Talk with us more about that and maybe how to flush that out more. What would you say?
Yeah, well, the whole energy you relate of just having to pick up all these pieces now because of this other person. Often on these calls, I talk about the woman's experience, but I will say it makes perfect sense to have so much pain and anger and frustration and wanting a woman to see the consequences of her actions, because again, if we look at what we want from the feminine, it is love and nurturance and warmth and body, and to wrap around you, to honor the incredible energy that you bring. And when she doesn't do that, and when she takes that away, and when she punishes you, it makes so much sense of wanting her to feel like the sting of what she's done. When I work with women on the other side of this who are so angry and so hurt by masculine energy, I really ask them to move beyond just the person they're in partnership with and then move into other experiences of the masculine in their life. And often for them, recognizing that their projection on their partner is not them, and their fault is something bigger that she's looking to resolve and heal, that really helps her become into more of an adult self, to take more self ownership and to stop trying to punish the man in front of her for all these things that hurt so much.
And you may love for your woman to do this kind of work. Maybe she is, maybe she's not. Right now, a lot of women with our guys are not. They're walking the other way. They don't want to get back on the bridge of the old relationship, which is something we talk about in our groups and in our coaching too. So what can you do? You can stop trying to put your expectations on her per se. You can turn your shoulders toward being the better man that you want to be every single day and bring your questions here. Bring your questions to our forum, our free Facebook forum. Come to these calls, post in the comments, ask questions here more. We have tons of other videos. We're happy to be here for you. Cynthia, any last thoughts for today?
Yeah, I just again, I find it really amazing every time to feel and try to even understand more of what this incredible masculine energy is that you all bring. And I feel it today, even in a subject that's about, you know, how could self-sabotage be here? Because there's so much awareness that you bring, so much openness and a desire to bring kingly energy to whatever the situation is. It's incredibly humbling to me. And it speaks of a masculine strength that I know I can just witness and honor because I don't know what that actually feels like other than to be in awe and appreciation of it.
Awesome. Good stuff. Thanks, Cynthia. Thanks, guys. See you next time.